Meghan Markle once casually referred to herself as a fraud, not in private, not off the record, but right on camera, flashing a smile as she recounted the story of how she landed her first big acting role. "I was such a fraud," she laughed, explaining how she lied about being a member of the Actors Union just to secure the part. That lie meant the casting team had to Taft-Hartley her, an industry workaround that allows non-union actors to appear in union projects. Meghan even compared herself to Mike Ross, the Suits character who famously faked his way into a legal career. It was meant to be a cheeky, relatable story. But let's be honest, that moment hit differently. Because it wasn't just about a job. It was a small, telling glimpse into how Meghan plays the game, with charm, strategic thinking, and a willingness to bend the truth when it suits her. What once seemed like harmless ambition is now being re-examined under a harsher light. A growing number of receipts, rumors, and revelations have started painting a bigger picture, one that points to a consistent pattern of manipulation wrapped in polished PR and soft-focus interviews. No, lying about a SAG card isn't some unforgivable crime. But when you zoom out, from her early days in Hollywood to her highly publicized royal exit, a pattern starts to emerge. It's not just one little fib. It's a series of carefully crafted moves that suggest a career built on perception over authenticity. And that's why people are now taking a second, closer look.
They've been damn hopeless at everything. So it seems to me they're resorting to becoming basically a version of the royal Kardashians.
Take the infamous lawsuit over the Finding Freedom biography. Meghan Markle told the court, under oath, that she hadn't collaborated with the authors. She said it with a straight face, in legal filings, fully aware of the weight those words carried. But then came the email leak, proof that Meghan had, in fact, been actively involved in shaping the book's narrative. She'd given talking points, suggestions, and even authorized someone to speak on her behalf. The judge called it a very unfortunate lapse of memory. Others called it what it clearly looked like: perjury. And yet, there were no real consequences. No accountability. Just another chapter in the Meghan Markle saga that quietly faded from the headlines while she moved on. And that's the bigger issue. She keeps moving fast enough to stay ahead of the truth. For years, the media tread carefully, cautious of being labeled racist or misogynistic. But public opinion has begun to shift, not driven by palace insiders or tabloid gossip, but by everyday people. Regular viewers, readers, and social media users are starting to notice the cracks. The viral clips, the tone-deaf moments, the contradictions. Remember the moon bump theories? Wild claims that Meghan wore prosthetics during her pregnancies. At the time, the mainstream press dismissed them as baseless conspiracy nonsense. And, to be fair, they are. But even outlets like the Daily Mail have since admitted that Meghan has a serious communications issue. That's a diplomatic way of saying, we don't know what to believe anymore. When a public figure's personal story keeps shifting and reshaping itself depending on the audience, trust begins to erode quickly. Then there's the now viral wedding footage, a clip of Meghan allegedly bowing her head toward Princess Charlotte. Some saw it as a sweet, respectful gesture. But critics noticed something else entirely, a cold, calculating glance that didn't feel maternal at all. Whether you believe the clip shows warmth or something more strategic, it added more fuel to the growing narrative that Meghan's public image is carefully curated and possibly misleading. What's more disturbing is that there are children involved now. Archie and Lilibet may one day come across all of this online, the court transcripts, the leaked emails, the viral videos, and be left to wonder, which version of their mother is the real one? The strong, private, empowered woman she presents in interviews, or the version exposed in courtrooms, leaks, and contradictions? This is where it stops being entertainment and starts becoming something far more serious. Meghan often carries a certain smugness, a quiet confidence that suggests she knows she's playing a game most people don't even realize exists. And maybe that's why she's been able to move through scandals and contradictions with barely a scratch. For all the controversy, she's rarely called out by name in any formal capacity. The institutions around her, from the press to the palace, seem hesitant, always stopping just short of saying what they really mean. It's like everyone's afraid to fully go there, even when the writing's clearly on the wall. But not everyone is afraid. Independent voices, especially YouTubers like P. Diner, have been sounding the alarm for years. They've dissected every interview, every red carpet appearance, and every contradiction with meticulous detail. And they're not just speculating, they're backing it all up with receipts, clips, quotes, and timelines that paint a very different picture from the polished version Meghan's PR team pushes. One video at a time, they've helped thousands see past the glamour to something far more complex and far less flattering. At the core, Meghan isn't just bending the truth, she's built an entire public persona on top of it. And when reality threatens to break through, she leans on victimhood to reset the narrative. It's a familiar pattern. When criticized, she doesn't respond, she reframes. "They're attacking me because I'm a woman of color," she says. "They're targeting me because I speak my truth." But that truth seems to shift, depending on who she's talking to. Take her most explosive claim, that someone in the royal family raised concerns about Archie's skin color. The world reacted with outrage. But later, when Harry was pressed to explain, he walked it back. "It wasn't racism," he said. "It was unconscious bias." So, which is it? Racism, or just poor phrasing? Either way, the damage was done. And once again, Meghan had moved on. It doesn't seem like Meghan Markle ever truly cared about the damage left in her wake. The implication lingered, unanswered, unresolved, and as always, she moved on. Then came Spare, Prince Harry's deeply personal memoir. But let's be honest, it didn't feel like Harry's voice. The tone, the emotional framing, the strategic storytelling, it all felt eerily familiar. Meghan's fingerprints were all over it. One passage, in particular, raised eyebrows. Harry admitted to speaking harshly to Meghan during an argument. Her response? "If you ever speak to me like that again, our marriage is over." That line struck a nerve, not just for what was said, but how it was delivered. It read less like a confession and more like a trap disguised as vulnerability. As if Harry, without realizing it, had just written the opening statement for their future divorce proceedings. Readers asked, why would he put that in print? Why include something so damning, so self-incriminating? The only answer that made sense was subtle, powerful influence, the kind Meghan seems to wield with expert precision. Influence that doesn't need to shout because it's already steering the narrative behind the scenes. And as all of this unfolds, across headlines, social media, and YouTube breakdowns, Harry appears to be slowly unraveling. He looks tired, isolated, emotionally spent. The once cheeky, confident prince who laughed with soldiers and challenged the press now seems like a man desperately trying to convince himself that everything is okay. That, perhaps, is the saddest part of all. Because while Meghan plots her next strategic move, Harry appears lost, stuck in a maze she designed, where every path leads back to her version of events. And the deeper he walks into it, the harder it becomes to escape. Harry may not see it yet, but he has the most to lose. Meghan's game has always been about narrative control. If, or more likely when, the post-divorce memoir drops, it will be a calculated, emotionally charged, selectively edited masterpiece. The palace will be cast as cold and uncaring. Catherine will be painted as distant, Camilla as manipulative, and Harry? Confused, troubled, emotionally unavailable. The setup is already in motion, woven subtly into past interviews, planted in passing comments, buried in emotional anecdotes. And that's what makes it so dangerous. It won't need to be factual. It just needs to feel real. Meghan doesn't have to prove her story. She just has to sell the vibe. A few carefully chosen details. A soft-spoken tone. A long list of how it made her feel. That's more than enough in today's emotion-driven media landscape. She's done it before on Oprah, in Netflix documentaries, on her podcast, and she can do it again, this time with even fewer restraints and far more venom. Meanwhile, Harry will be the casualty, not just in public opinion, but in private identity. He gave up his homeland, his royal titles, and his reputation for someone who has shown, time and time again, that she's willing to bend the truth when it suits her narrative. And if he ever tries to take any of it back, his titles, his legacy, his autonomy, he'll be labeled a traitor to her version of events. The walls are closing in, and they're built from his own words. What's worse is the silence. The royal family remains mute, still trapped in their never complain, never explain mantra. But in this case, silence isn't dignity, it's weakness. It leaves a vacuum that Meghan is more than happy to fill with her version of the story. The palace watches from behind lace curtains while she reshapes the narrative for a global audience. William seems ready to draw a line, but he's boxed in, held back by a king who still sees family loyalty as sacred, even as that family threatens to burn the entire institution to the ground. There's still time, but barely. If William wants to lead with strength, he must act now. That means cutting off the titles. That means publicly challenging falsehoods. That means showing the world that being born into royalty is a responsibility, not a content strategy for Netflix. Because the longer they wait, the more ground Meghan gains. And the collateral damage? The children. Archie and Lilibet didn't ask for this. But they're already caught in a storm of speculation, PR battles, and internet theories too large for their young lives to bear. The moon bump rumors, the hidden birth records, the inconsistencies, these may be taboo to mention in the press, but they're all searchable online. One day, the internet will deliver those questions directly to the children. And when it does, they'll have to reconcile the fairy tale version of their mother they grew up with against the darker narratives the world has seen. Meghan may be able to fool the press, but she won't be able to fool her children forever. And when that reckoning comes, it won't be Meghan at the center. It will be Harry, not as the villain, maybe not even as the victim, but as the man who let it happen, the man who stayed quiet, who handed over his voice, his story, and his future to someone else. The man who didn't protect his legacy, his truth, or his children from the storm building around them. Because by the time Meghan finishes telling her story, Harry might not have one left. At some point, every game ends. Every mask slips. Every lie hits a wall it can't climb. For Meghan, that wall may be built by her own ambition. For Harry, it'll be built from regret. And for the rest of us, it's just a waiting game to see who wakes up first.